I never thought I'd be standing in front of him like this, broken, humiliated, and on the verge of losing everything. My heart raced, my stomach twisted in knots, but the weight of my own guilt seemed heavier than anything else. I could feel his stare, cold and furious, piercing through me. And yet, somehow, it was easier to stand there, at that moment, than to face what was really happening inside my chest. It had started off innocently enough. I never expected things would spiral out of control this fast. The affair was supposed to be an escape, a temporary distraction from a marriage that had felt more like a partnership in name only. My husband, Daniel, was always distant, consumed by his career and his obsession with success. I used to admire his drive, but lately, I found myself wondering if I even knew him anymore. And then came Alex. Alex had been everything Daniel wasn't: spontaneous, passionate, and completely in tune with what I needed. I never planned to fall for him, but here I was, in the mess I'd created. We met at a work event, of all places, where I had gone to accompany Daniel, who was too busy to pay attention to me. Alex was different from anyone I'd ever met. He noticed me, really noticed me. And over the course of a few weeks, the spark turned into something I couldn't ignore. But I didn't expect him to go this far, to drag my husband into the mess. I had hoped I could keep my world separate, my husband, my lover. But Alex was impulsive. He was reckless. And at that party, in front of a room full of guests, he made the fatal mistake of confronting Daniel in front of everyone. "Hey, loser," Alex had said, his voice loud and dripping with arrogance. "Your wife is mine now." The room fell silent. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as I tried to make sense of what I had just heard. My heart pounded in my ears as Daniel turned slowly to face us, his expression one I had never seen before, betrayal mixed with fury, and something darker, something I didn't recognize. I tried to speak, to tell Alex to shut up, but the words didn't come. Everything happened in slow motion after that. Daniel's face turned pale, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. And then, he turned to me. "What the hell is this?" His voice was dangerously calm, too calm, like a storm waiting to break. I couldn't find the words. I wanted to explain, to make it all go away, but how could I? How could I undo the damage in that one moment? It was out in the open now. Alex had laid everything bare, no longer caring about the consequences. He didn't care about Daniel's feelings, or mine. He only cared about winning. "Is this true?" Daniel's voice cut through the thick silence, his eyes now fixed on me, demanding an answer. "You're really sleeping with him?" I felt my face burn, the shame creeping up my neck like fire. I wanted to deny it, to pretend it hadn't happened, but the truth was hanging in the air, suffocating me. My eyes flicked to Alex, and for the first time, I felt a flash of anger toward him. How dare he do this? How dare he expose me, expose us, like this? But even as the anger surged within me, I knew I couldn't turn the tide now. I had no choice but to face the music. I nodded, barely able to look Daniel in the eye. "Yes," I whispered, the word coming out like a confession, a sentence. "Yes, it's true." Daniel's face twisted in disbelief, and for a moment, I thought he might break down in front of me. But then something changed. His jaw tightened, and his eyes narrowed. He didn't shout, didn't throw things, didn't collapse into tears like I had imagined. Instead, he looked at me with a quiet intensity that made my blood run cold. "You think I'm a loser?" His voice was ice, each word cutting through me like a blade. "You think he's better than me?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could I say? I knew how he felt. I knew he'd never been the kind of man to fight for affection, not in the way I needed. But it didn't make this any easier to explain. It didn't make me any less guilty. Alex, seemingly satisfied with the chaos he had caused, turned to leave, but not before one last glance at me. "You know where to find me, babe," he said with a smirk, as if he had just won a game. Then, without another word, he walked out of the room. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stood there, paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak. Daniel didn't look at me. His gaze was fixed on the door, his expression unreadable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "I don't know what you want from me now," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I don't know if there's anything left to save. But I'm done being your fool." I wanted to apologize. I wanted to explain that I was just looking for something I wasn't getting from him, that I never meant for it to go this far. But the words stuck in my throat. What could I say? How could I fix this? "Pack your things," Daniel said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You're not welcome here anymore." And just like that, it was over. I stood in the living room, staring at the empty space where just hours ago, everything felt normal. But now, everything had changed. Daniel's words echoed in my head, drowning out any thoughts of explanation, any glimmer of hope I might have had left. "Pack your things," he had said, his voice a cold command. "You're not welcome here anymore." And that was it. No tears, no arguments, no apologies, just the brutal finality of a marriage I had thought would last forever, ending in the most devastating way imaginable. I could still feel the weight of the silence pressing down on me. The house felt hollow, as though it was holding its breath, waiting for something. My eyes wandered around the room, at the photos on the walls, the furniture we'd carefully chosen together. Each item now seemed like a cruel reminder of everything I had lost. This wasn't the way it was supposed to end. None of it was. But here I was, facing the consequences of my own actions. I had tried to imagine this moment for months, ever since the affair began. I told myself that if it ever came to light, I would be ready, that I would have a plan, a way to fix things. But now, standing in front of the man I had once promised my life to, I realized how utterly unprepared I was. I hadn't expected him to react this way, so cold, so final. I thought there would be a conversation, an argument, maybe even a chance for reconciliation. But this? This was something else. I turned away from the door, my hands trembling as I gathered the few things I had in the room. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. I had never seen Daniel this angry, this unyielding. Even when we fought in the past, he always held back, always kept a piece of himself distant. But now, it was as if he had shut me out completely. And in that moment, I realized that the man I had been married to for years was gone. Maybe he had left a long time ago, but today, he had made it clear, he wasn't coming back. I walked slowly up the stairs to our bedroom, my footsteps echoing in the quiet house. I had expected him to come after me, to stop me, to plead for a chance to fix things. But he didn't. He was already gone, emotionally and mentally, and I couldn't blame him. The truth was, I had hurt him beyond repair. And I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive myself for that. As I packed my things, my mind raced, replaying every moment, every lie, every stolen kiss. I thought back to the first time Alex and I had met, how it had felt so innocent, so simple. But somewhere along the way, it had escalated. I had let it escalate. I had chosen the escape, the thrill of something forbidden, over the reality of my own life. And now, I was paying the price. I knew I should have ended it before it got this far. I should have stopped when I still had a chance to salvage my marriage, to repair the damage before it was too late. But I hadn't. I kept going, driven by something I couldn't quite understand. Was it love? Was it lust? Or was it just the need for attention, for something that made me feel alive again? Whatever it was, it had destroyed everything. The sound of the front door opening pulled me from my thoughts. My heart skipped a beat. Was Daniel back? Had he changed his mind? But no, it was too late for that. I had already lost him. My gaze shifted to the doorway, and I saw Alex standing there, his expression full of confidence and arrogance. "Hey, babe," he said casually, stepping into the room like he belonged there. "You ready to go?" His presence was like a slap in the face. I had called him, yes. I had let him believe that we were something real. But now, as he stood there, I realized just how much of a mistake this had been. He wasn't the answer. He never had been. I had thought he could replace what was missing in my life, but now I saw him for what he was, a distraction, a temporary fix for something deeper that I had never bothered to confront. "Alex," my voice faltered as I tried to find the right words, but they wouldn't come. How could I explain what had just happened, how everything had spiraled out of control so quickly? How could I make him understand that this wasn't what I wanted anymore? "You know, you're lucky I'm here," he said, his tone light, almost mocking. "I mean, who else is gonna take care of you now, right?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. The realization hit me like a wave. I didn't want him here. I didn't want anything from him. The truth was, I was no longer sure of what I wanted. The excitement of the affair had faded, and all that was left was a void that neither Daniel nor Alex could fill. "You should leave, Alex," I said quietly, my voice trembling. "I need to be alone." He raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. "You sure about that? I thought you were done with him. I thought you wanted to be with me." "I thought so too," I whispered, my heart breaking all over again. "But I don't think I want anything anymore." His smirk faded, replaced by something I couldn't quite read. For a moment, I thought he might push back, insist on staying. But instead, he turned and walked out without another word. I closed the door behind him, the silence settling in once more. It was finally real. Daniel was gone, and so was Alex. And now, I was left to face the wreckage of everything I had destroyed. As I sat down on the bed, my mind swirled with thoughts of what came next. How would I move forward? Where would I go? And most of all, could I ever forgive myself for what I had done? The questions were endless, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't go back. What I had with Daniel was gone, and I wasn't sure if there was any way to fix what I had broken. But somehow, I had to keep going. The days that followed were a blur. Everything felt so surreal, as if I was floating outside of my own life, watching the pieces of my world crumble. I stayed in a small hotel on the edge of town, far enough from the house to avoid the memories, but close enough that I could still feel the pull, like a magnet I couldn't escape. Each night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had done to end up here. The affair had been my decision, yes, but the fallout, the devastation, I hadn't expected this. I never imagined it would go this far, never imagined that one careless decision could lead to such an irreversible break. I thought I would feel relief once I was away from Daniel, but instead, all I felt was emptiness. There were moments when I convinced myself that I had made the right choice, that my marriage had been a lie for so long that it was better to walk away and find something real. But deep down, I knew the truth. My marriage hadn't been a lie. It had been flawed, yes, but it had been real. And I had thrown it all away. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through the contacts. I hesitated when I saw Daniel's name. There had been no contact between us since that night, no calls, no messages. He had shut me out completely. Part of me was relieved, it meant that I didn't have to face the shame of what I had done. But another part of me was desperate for any sign that he still cared, even a small one. I wanted him to reach out, to say something, anything, that would give me hope. But as the days passed and the silence stretched on, I realized that wasn't going to happen. He was done with me. And in some ways, I understood why. The door to my hotel room creaked open, and I turned quickly to see a familiar face. Alex. What are you doing here? I asked, trying to keep the surprise and the anger out of my voice. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his expression one of casual indifference. I figured you might need company. It's not like you've got anyone else around, right? His words stung more than I expected, but I didn't let it show. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to feel when Alex showed up at my doorstep. Part of me wanted to scream at him, tell him to leave and never come back. But another part of me was tired, exhausted by the weight of everything. I didn't want to be alone, even though I knew that was exactly what I needed. I didn't ask for your company, I said coldly, standing up from the bed. What do you want, Alex? He gave me that same smug grin, the one I had once found so charming, but now it only irritated me. Relax, babe. I'm just here to check on you. You're not exactly the strong and independent type, are you? I resisted the urge to snap back at him. I didn't have the energy for this. I'm fine, I said, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. You can leave now. He leaned against the doorframe, clearly not ready to leave anytime soon. You think you're fine, huh? Look at you, staying in a hotel, away from everything, running from the truth. You're not fine, and you know it. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I hated that he was right. I hated that I couldn't escape the mess I had created, that no matter where I went, the guilt followed me like a shadow. I don't need a lecture from you, I muttered, turning away from him. I don't need anything from you. Oh, I think you do, Alex said, his voice suddenly serious. You're lost right now. You don't even know what you want. But I do. I know exactly what you need. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me at his words. What did he think he could offer me? What did he think I needed? In the beginning, I thought he was the answer, the escape from my lonely, distant marriage. But now, I knew better. He wasn't the answer. He was just another distraction, another lie I had told myself to avoid facing the reality of what was happening in my life. I'm not your project, Alex, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. You don't get to fix me. You don't even know who I am. He took a step closer, his eyes locked on mine, intense and unblinking. Maybe I don't. But I can tell you one thing, you're never going to fix things on your own. You need someone, and I'm here. I'm the one who can give you what Daniel never did. His words cut through me, sharp and painful. He was right. Daniel hadn't given me what I needed, and I had found it in Alex, at least, I thought I had. But now, with the reality of everything sinking in, I knew that it wasn't what I truly wanted. I didn't need Alex, and I didn't need anyone to fix me. What I needed was to face my own mistakes and take responsibility for the consequences. I don't want you here, Alex, I said firmly, my voice growing stronger. I don't want anything from you. I don't even want your pity. Alex stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the room. The door closed quietly behind him, and I was left standing there, feeling more alone than ever before. I collapsed onto the bed, my face buried in my hands as the weight of everything crashed down on me. I had ruined my life, and now there was no going back. There was no quick fix, no easy way out. All I had left were the consequences of my actions, and the realization that I had to live with them. The phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. I hesitated, my heart skipping a beat as I saw the name on the screen. Daniel. I stared at the phone for a long time, my fingers hovering over the screen. Should I answer? Should I even try? Part of me wanted to hear his voice, to hear him say that he still cared, that we could fix this. But another part of me knew that I had already lost him, that this was the end. I let the phone ring out, the sound echoing in the empty room. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to cry. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand, a dull reminder of the world still spinning outside the little cocoon of isolation I had created. I rubbed my eyes, the heaviness of the past few days settling like a weight on my chest. I had expected to wake up and feel some relief, as though somehow, the world would be different today. But it wasn't. It was the same, and I was still trapped in the consequences of my own choices. The screen lit up with a name I had come to dread seeing, Daniel. I stared at it for a long time, my finger hovering over the answer button, but something in me froze. The person who had once been my partner in everything was now a stranger, and I wasn't sure how to face him. Would he shout at me again? Would he accuse me of ruining his life forever? Or would he surprise me with something I wasn't ready to hear? I let the phone buzz until it stopped, but my thoughts were still racing, as though I couldn't quite shake the feeling that something was about to break. After a moment, my phone chimed again, this time with a text. It was short, simple, and to the point. Can we talk? The message felt like a punch to the gut. I wasn't sure if I was ready to talk. I wasn't sure if I ever would be. But the part of me that still cared, the part of me that was still holding on to the idea of reconciliation, couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe he still wanted to fix things. Maybe he hadn't completely given up on us. I stared at the message for what felt like hours before finally typing a response. Where? There was a long pause, the silence stretching between us. Then, a single word appeared on the screen. My place. The idea of going back to the house, to the place where everything had unraveled, made my stomach turn. But I knew it was inevitable. There was no running from the mess I had created. If I wanted closure, if I wanted any chance at redemption, I had to face it. I had to face him. I stood up, the weight of the decision settling heavily on my shoulders. My hands shook as I grabbed my things, as if I were preparing for a battle I wasn't sure I was ready to fight. I could feel the eyes of the world on me, even though it was just the two of us now. There were so many things left unsaid between us, so many broken pieces that I wasn't sure could ever be put back together. By the time I arrived at the house, the familiar sense of dread had taken root. The driveway was empty, the front door slightly ajar, as if it were waiting for me to step inside. I stood there for a moment, gathering my courage, then walked through the door. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. I hadn't realized how much I missed the sound of his voice, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of life in this space. Everything felt like it was frozen in time, like the world had stopped the moment I left. And yet, I knew it hadn't. Time had moved on, and so had Daniel. Daniel? My voice felt foreign in the stillness of the house. There was no response. I took a few tentative steps forward, my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. My mind raced with thoughts of what I would say, how I would explain myself. But there was nothing to say, really. I had already said it all, without words. I rounded the corner into the living room and found him standing by the window, staring out at the yard. He didn't turn when he heard me enter. His back was to me, and I couldn't tell what he was thinking. The anger from that night still lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. But now, it wasn't just anger I felt from him. It was something more painful, disappointment. "I didn't think you'd come," Daniel said, his voice low, almost lost in the silence. He didn't look at me, didn't offer any greeting. It was as though I was a stranger to him now. I had to," I whispered, stepping closer. "I couldn't just leave it like this." His shoulders tensed, and for a moment, I thought he might turn and walk away. But instead, he slowly faced me, his eyes locking onto mine. The anger was still there, but there was something else too. Something that made my heart ache in a way I hadn't expected. "Why, Rachel?" His voice was steady but edged with a deep pain that I had never heard before. "Why did you do it? Why did you throw everything away?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut, and for the first time in days, I couldn't breathe. I had no good answer. I had no excuse. I had been selfish, reckless, and cruel. I had broken everything we had built, and now there was nothing left to say. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have a reason. I wish I did, but I don't." Daniel didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood there, looking at me with a mixture of sadness and resignation. I could see the way he had changed since the last time I saw him. The man I had known, the man I had once loved so deeply, seemed to have faded away, replaced by someone else. Someone who no longer trusted me, who no longer believed in the promises we had made to each other. "I thought I knew you," he said softly, his words cutting through the silence like a knife. "But I was wrong." I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I fought them back. I had no right to cry, no right to feel sorry for myself. I had done this to him. I had done this to us. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "I'm so sorry." He shook his head, his expression unreadable. "Sorry doesn't fix this, Rachel. Sorry doesn't take away what you've done." I knew he was right. There was no fixing this. There was no magic word that would make everything go back to the way it was. I had destroyed the only good thing I had ever had. "I don't expect you to forgive me," I said, my voice breaking. I just wanted you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this." Daniel didn't respond. He just looked at me, his eyes empty. I could see the pain there, but there was also something else, something that told me he had already made his decision. "I think it's over," he finally said, his voice quiet but final. "I think we're done." And with those words, I knew it was true. It was over. There was no going back, no way to fix what had been broken. All I had left was the shattered remnants of a love that had once been everything to me. And as I turned to leave, I realized that the only thing left to do was to walk away, just as he had. I stepped out of the house, the door closing softly behind me, and I realized that I wasn't just leaving a house, I was leaving the life I had once known, the man I had once loved. And this time, there would be no coming back.